On the week that the Green Bay Packers will be in town, not only to practice against the Colts, but then obviously to play against the Colts. Preseason game number 2, it will be the preseason home game number 1 for the Colts. Now, the thing is, there's going to be, and Eddie, you tell me if this is correct. If you go to Newfields, better known as the Indianapolis Museum of Art as its original name.
I've only been there once, and it was for Christmas. I've never gone there outside of that.
The Christmas lights is pretty special, right? And I know Newfields has had their PR nightmares, some of them very just over the last year, I realize. But if you go to, and I'm going on the way back, I assume this is still the case. But if you go to Newfields and you park your car and you walk in, and it used to be right out front. I assume it still is. Maybe it's been moved inside now. I don't know. But the Robert Indiana Love sculpture, you've seen it, right, Eddie? Or at least you've seen designs of it because
perhaps
what's that?
I said perhaps.
Others, Google Robert Indiana Love sculpture, and you'll know it because you maybe have not seen the sculpture, but you've seen the design, right?
Absolutely.
You might want to keep that Google up, or even go to the Museum of Art, because it is my understanding, if you are a cheesehead, if you're coming from Eau Claire, you're driving down from Oshkosh, you're making your way from Manitowoc, you're gallivanting in from Green Bay, you're from Milwaukee, whatever it might be, if you're a cheesehead, you're a Packer fan, and you're coming to Indianapolis to see your beloved Pack, go Pack go, you might as well go by Newfields on the way, or Google what Eddie just did, because a little birdie's told me, Eddie, that that's your best chance of seeing Love here in Indiana, correct?
Oh, I see what you did there, Jake. Yes, it was announced by Brian Gutekunst. For the Green Bay Packers. I think he's their general manager. I think that's the technical title there. That he will not be participating in the upcoming preseason game against the Colts because he had a procedure done on his left thumb. So he will not participate in the joint practice on Thursday.
Well, he can't even hitchhike down here if he misses the team bus then, right? Unless it's wrapped that way, and then it'd be very easy for him to do so. Does anybody hitchhike anymore?
I don't think so, Jake.
When's the last time you saw a hitchhiker?
Ooh.
Have you ever picked up a hitchhiker?
No.
Never?
No.
Okay. You don't see that much anymore. So he will not be playing at all, correct?
Correct.
So no Jordan Love. Does that mean that the Colts now have to revisit the House of Horrors that is Malik Willis? Isn't he their backup?
I believe he is, yes.
Didn't he defeat the Colts?
Him and Sean Clifford?
That's the big red dog, right? Isn't that right?
That was just Clifford, the big red dog.
Do you know what Clifford the big red dog and Jordan Love this week have in common?
Oh, gosh, what is it?
No thumbs, right?
Okay.
I'm just saying, for what it's worth.
You're on one today.
Well, sleep deprivation. It's a sleep deprivation Tuesday. I've always said red eyes are like whiskey. They're a good idea at the time. And it's not the day that you land in the red eye that hurts you. It's the day after because your body's all wonky. So I got no sleep. No sleep at all. Virtually none. So sleep deprivation Tuesday. But usually that's when my brain is really firing on all cylinders, which is strange, I realize. But with that news, for the Colts and the question mark at quarterback, then the question mark becomes for the Colts, who exactly is going to be guarding the whatever receivers or quarterback is being used at any interval for Green Bay. For the Colts themselves, they obviously, and we got into this yesterday a little bit, I know the guys talked about it this morning as well, just the cornerback position. And in defense of Chris Ballard and in defense of the Colts, the reality is that is a position that I think we felt pretty good about. I think we felt, for the most part, pretty good about where the Colts were at the defensive back position coming into camp. Because you had, Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, Kenny Moore. I mean, these are names that we're familiar with, right? And then obviously they went out and added a lot of depth at defensive back, both in corners and safeties. But now you look at guys like a Jonathan Edwards, who is an undrafted free agent, and he's going to get opportunity here. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, because so long as Kenny Moore, for example, is able to come back and be ready to go, which it looks like he's going to be in the regular season, Eddie, you kind of want the preseason to be a time when you are figuring out how much depth you do have, and the corner is one of those spots. Like a Jonathan Edwards, if he ends up making the roster and shows well in the preseason, then in the inevitable situation where he's going to be called upon at some point in the regular season, he's got some rep to him. Yes, I realize it's different. I get that. But you cannot have too many in terms of the defensive backs. You just can never have too many. And we're seeing why already, because here we are in preseason and the attrition is already kicking in. I mean, it really is remarkable. Now, the one drawback here, and I heard Kevin mention this morning, and I thought it was a really good point. Think about Selection Sunday in the NCAA tournament. What do we always say, Eddie, leading up to Selection Sunday and the tournament week? When you have a 23-2 Murray State or 33-2 Murray State who's played nobody in their conference, I mean outside of their conference, everybody always says, you need, boy, if you're 18-12 Minnesota, you need Murray State to win their conference, right? You don't want bid stealers.
No bid stealers.
No bid stealers, right? When you start talking about attrition at the cornerback position for the Colts, and you're somebody like a Jelani Woods, you don't want any bids. You don't want roster stealers. Positions that are luxury and you have depth, like tight end, maybe a Jelani Woods, if you're looking at, we know that, clearly Mo Alley Cox is going to make the roster.
Mm-hmm.
We assume that Drew Ogletree is going to make the roster, and then Will Mallory. If they want to go one more tight end there, and they're looking at a Jelani Woods who they've waited on for 2 years now, and I think they saw some promise in him clearly because they waited out his injuries. But if they all of a sudden now are in a situation where they've got to get depth at corner because a Kenny Moore or a Juju Brents or a Jalen Jones is not ready to begin the regular season, then you're taking, say, a Jonathan Edwards onto your roster. There's your bid stealer, right?
Yeah.
And that's squeezing out at position elsewhere where you have some guys that would be luxury to get on the roster. That's the ripple effect of these sorts of things. And then I got to thinking about, as I was thinking about the Colts and, Malik Willis, and the fact that Malik Willis was a guy, I remember when he was coming out in the draft, people were like, maybe that's who the Colts should get, as the next franchise quarterback. And, he had a good final year of college, and he starts in Tennessee and then ends up in Green Bay. You know the story there. And I don't know if I made this point before, but I really did I mentioned it, it's Sleep Deprivation Tuesday. At 3:28 in the morning last night, this hit me.
Okay.
I was laying there, and, do you ever get that spot where you're about to fall asleep and you're about to fall asleep because, like, your thought, all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, like, it's getting just a little bit wonky here. I think I'm starting to dream, and you realize that you're fading. And I was wondering, was I fading, and was I about to fall asleep because I heard the ghost of football past came to me as a vision in my about to fall asleep last night, early this morning. Jake. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's Jacob Marley saying his name. No, it wasn't. It was the ghost of football past. And the ghost of football past said to me, Jake, I have figured out the problem with the Colts. And I said, speak to me. Speak to me, ghost of football past. I want to know. And he said, you have to look back at the past. And Jake, nobody focuses more on that than you. You always talk precedent. You always talk about history. And maybe you're sleeping on, despite the fact you're not sleeping tonight, what is the real issue with the Colts at quarterback. And I said, Ghost of Football Past, tell me more. And then I thought about it, Eddie, and I know that this is maybe overthinking it, but I think there is a dose of reality in this.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Irsay, rest his soul. I mean, I speak, in no means is any of this to speak ill of Jim Irsay, but Jim Irsay, before he was the sole owner of the Colts, his father owned the team, and Jim Irsay was the general manager. And I've talked many times before about how I believe Jim Irsay was a football guy through and through. I say is in the present tense because even though, unfortunately, he has passed, he is still his presence, the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, I get it. And Jim Irsay is a guy that because he grew up around football, his father was the owner, he worked in the locker room, he was the first to tell you. He folded towels. And kudos to his father and to Jim Irsay for that ability to start at the bottom and work his way through the franchise. And he played in college at SMU, and he was around the game. He was a student of the game, no question. And I think other owners would tell you that no owner perhaps was more dialed in with the game of football than Jim Irsay, because unlike other owners, football was his empire. And he knew the game and loved the game of football. But at a very young age, he was made the general manager of the Colts. And while Jim Irsay was a very good owner, and while Jim Irsay was a very good humanitarian and philanthropist and pop cultural almost icon within the city, if there is one area that probably even Jim Irsay would have told you was an area that he felt he fell short, it was as a general manager of an NFL team. Because he made a couple of moves that were questionable. The trade for Dickerson was fabulous, but then the decision to try to experiment with a wishbone offense was weird. And the trade for Freddie Young was cool that they were getting a marquee defensive star, but they got him after shoulder surgery, and they gave up 2 first-rounders to get him and probably could have gotten him for a 5th. Jim Irsay erred as a general manager. But in no area did he probably err more than this. Jim Irsay loved Burt Jones. Loved him. I think he had a great reverence for Johnny Unitas, but he loved Burt Jones because Burt Jones was a quarterback in the Irsay era of the Colts with Bob Irsay, before Bob Irsay really had kind of lost control. And I think Jim Irsay had a great respect and love for Burt Jones as a player and as a guy that was an AFC MVP and all of that, right? And so when Jim Irsay was handed the keys as a general manager, one of probably the most seismic move he made was trading Chris Hinton, Andre Rison, and draft picks for Jeff George, for the rights to draft Jeff George. So he drafts number 1 in 1990, and he drafts Jeff George. $1 million arm, fabulous talent, pedigree like no other. High school football legend in Indiana, megastar at Illinois by way of Purdue and Miami, had all the pedigree and had the arm that had the league salivating. Allegedly threw a 75-yard pass in his Illinois letter jacket after his pro day. Just on a bet. That was 80. It was 80 yards. He came out, and legend has it, they said, look, we just want to know if you really can throw 80 yards. And he still had his letter jacket on and said, you want me to throw across my body or standing straight up? And he throws, and he lands it exactly on the 20-yard line opposite end of the field. And Jim Irsay walks up to him and says, I'm going to do everything I can to make you the number 1 pick in the draft, even though I don't have the number 1 pick right now. And he makes a deal with Atlanta, and he trades for Jeff George. But he trades his best lineman and his best receiver. And Jeff George, as a franchise quarterback, as the number 1 pick in the draft, wasn't given the tools and the utensils and the proper footing around him as an Indianapolis Colt to immediately be able to grow and blossom organically. He goes on to become a pretty good quarterback in Atlanta and in Oakland and it gets him a big contract in Washington. But in Indianapolis, the experiment didn't work out because they went through a different coach on the regular. They went through different offensive coordinators. They didn't have great receivers for him. He's throwing to veterans and guys that are a little bit washed up. And he just didn't have the pieces around him that a young quarterback needs. Now, Jeff George would be the first to tell you. Jeff George made mistakes as well. I'm not putting that all on Jim Irsay. But like all of us, I think Jim Irsay then thought to himself, I want another opportunity at this. I had a number one pick quarterback, a franchise quarterback, and it didn't work out. And then it happened for him again 10 years later. And he drafts and gets Peyton Manning. And they already had Marvin Harrison in the mix, and they had Marshall Faulk. But they have Bill Polian. And Bill Polian puts together a team around Peyton Manning that is 100% built around the support of Peyton Manning. And they draft Jerome Pathon, and they draft E.G. Green, even though those two guys didn't necessarily work out. But they already had Marvin Harrison. And they draft Reggie Wayne when no one thinks that they needed him. And they had Ken Dilger, and then they go and they draft Dallas Clark, and they draft Edgerrin James, and they have Tarek Glenn, and they draft pieces on they draft Adam Meadows. They get pieces on the line. They go out and they get Jeff Saturday, and they build everything around Peyton Manning. And it worked because Peyton Manning is different. He's different. There were pieces that we now know were players that were made great players because Peyton Manning lifts everybody. Not to take anything away from those people that I mentioned, but there were a lot of players that became household NFL players because of Peyton Manning. And then you transition right from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. And you go from what is a historically, generationally unique mind at quarterback and organic, natural talent bred in a lab to be a quarterback. Peyton Manning fell out of the womb to be an NFL quarterback. And I don't mean that because of his dad. I mean because of the way he was wired. Listening to old games, studying film, looking at defenses, looking at it a second time, a third time, and a fourth time. Moving into an apartment at 86 in Meridian the day after he's drafted with nothing but VHS tapes and a television. And saying, I'm going to earn my money. Just wired differently. And you go straight from Peyton Manning into Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, who has an intellect like nobody's business, reads books about concrete and architecture in ancient Europe, and rides his bike and grows up in Europe for a father who played in the NFL and, mind you, was the backup quarterback to Archie Manning. But Andrew Luck also was organically bred from the get-go to be a quarterback. He's a big guy. He's physical. He can look at a defense not twice, not three times, but four times and immediately decipher what it means. And he can compute it all in his head. And he can do it quickly from the get-go. Not to say those guys didn't put in a ton of work, but the natural ability for them right there, generationally unique. There are literally probably two guys in the NFL the last 30 years that had this coming out of college. And it's the two that landed in Indianapolis. And for that reason, I think that Jim Irsay thought to himself, I've made good on it now. I erred with Jeff George, but now I know that my franchise blueprint allows for franchise quarterbacks to succeed. This is the place where top 5 drafted quarterbacks come to bloom. But they didn't need another one. Luck retires. We know the history of going after veteran quarterbacks. And then finally, Jim Irsay says to Chris Ballard, the time is now. We've got to go draft ourselves the next franchise quarterback. But Jim Irsay thinks to himself, because I have the franchise where franchise quarterbacks come to bloom. Because he had erred in the way he handled and built things around Jeff George, but because of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck and their completely unique generational talent and ability, the Colts organization just assumed that meant that when you draft a quarterback in the top 5, it is essentially plug and play. And so, therefore, when they drafted Anthony Richardson, who may have as many physical ability traits naturally as Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. He might have as strong an arm as Peyton Manning threw a dying duck pass, but he knew exactly when to get it there. He knew exactly how long it took any pass to get to 12 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, when to get it, the timing. He had everything down pat. He knew where the defender was going to break. He knew all of it, right? Andrew Luck had the intellect to be able to compute that immediately in his head, but also had this rocket of an arm, big guy, athletic, could run, not afraid to dip his shoulder. Richardson has a lot of those traits from a physical standpoint. And I'm not saying he doesn't have the intellect. He may well have the intellect. But Anthony Richardson, unlike Andrew Luck and unlike Peyton Manning, had not come into a situation having played in 35, 40, 50 college games, started in all of them, big-time moments, big-time pursuit, all of those things, spotlight on him. And he comes in here, and Anthony Richardson needs more water. He needs more fertilizer. And where the Colts erred is they thought because they had been through the drill not once but twice since the last time they erred in building around a franchise quarterback, that meant that they had the blueprint on how to get these players to immediately, when you plug them in, flourish. And they erred in figuring out how much nurturing Anthony Richardson needed, and they handed him the keys too early. And as a result of that, I'm not going to say they failed Anthony Richardson. It's too early to say that just yet because he is still a very young player, and he still has a limited number of starts under his belt. But in terms of the little things that you expect and want from a franchise quarterback and the overall commitment to seeing it a second, third, fourth time, living in a world of now, obviously, we're talking about stream video as opposed to VHS tapes, all of those things. Understanding and knowing the nuances of playing the position of quarterback. And one of the areas where, to me, I mentioned it the other day, Anthony Richardson still shows a naivete. I mentioned it to Chap. When Anthony Richardson helmet tapped and took himself out of the game, that's one thing. But the naivete to afterwards say, look, I admit I was tired, and not understanding what that was going to mean to not only the fans and the media, but more importantly, within his own locker room. And I know those guys stood by him, and I get that because I think he's a well-liked guy, but not understanding the fallback that was going to happen from him saying that and not learning from it, because when he gets blown up in play number 8 of his preseason here, in a critical preseason for him to see things a second, third, fourth time, and he gets blown up and then afterwards says, yeah, I need to mind my P's and Q's better, and I should have read that differently. Again, the naivete of not recognizing it, number one, but then admitting to not recognizing it, number two. I'm not saying sit here and lie, but I'm saying sit here and lie. I don't think he's a bad guy in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think he lacks the intellect to play quarterback in any way, shape, or form. But he needed more time and fertilizer around him and watering from the get-go. And so, therefore, I wonder if at this point it has not gone too far, because you now, with a third-year guy, are expecting him to learn first-year traits. Because you had two guys that those first-year traits, they knew instinctively from the get-go, and you convinced yourself that means that everybody is wired that same way. And they're not. And that's where we are. And it's going to be this way between Richardson and Daniel Jones. My concern still is if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And you don't have one of them that is clearly separated from the other. And that, to me, is bothersome. Fever are in action tonight. Is that correct, Eddie? I noticed a huge crowd gathered out in front of the Conrad.
Yes, Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings are in town.
And that means that you will be doing the pre- and post-game, correct?
Yes, pregame starts at 7:15 right here on the Fan, and post-game coverage, after the game's over.
And it also means that, we haven't talked with Stephanie White yet this week, so what better time to do it than today, correct?
That's right.
Would you like to line up for me, Eddie, the way that you have them served in terms of today's roster of guests?
Well played on the pun of sports there, Jake, with the roster of guests. Stephanie White will join us at the top of the hour, Stephen Holder at 2 o'clock, and then Scott Agnes will join us at the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour as well.
So Stephanie White joins us about 35 from now. There is a new player, and I think actually this ties in well for the Fever in terms of getting a player that is joining your roster and having to, in Odyssey Sims, with her Odyssey as a player that this is not unusual for her. We'll get into that. But it also may very well play into the Odyssey that is the Caitlin Clark return. And I'll explain what I mean by that on the other side. And you can always text us as well. 239-1070 is the text line for the station. We see your texts. We try to read them. We try to interact with them. And again, as Eddie just mentioned, Holder, Stephanie White, Agnes, big show lined up here on a Tuesday and a sleep deprivation one. It's Query and Company on the Fan. Eddie, you mentioned, and we were going to come back, and I do want to talk about the Fever and Odyssey Sims, and one of the things I think is a benefit is this is a player. The Fever are in a position where, again, attrition, the word of the day, they need point guard help, and so they go out and they get Odyssey Sims, who is a veteran player and a player that's been in the league a long time, had a lot of success. But one of the things I think is an advantage is she is a player that joining a team mid-season is not unique to her. She has been through that, and I think that helps with, and we'll talk to Stephanie White about this coming up just under 30 minutes from now, but that helps with the immersion, I think. But then also, if you are having to kind of scale things back a little bit because your point guard is one that is not totally familiar with the playbook, obviously Caitlin Clark is, but, and tell me if this makes sense, does that then also allow for a more of an ease in when Caitlin Clark is brought back from a practice standpoint? I don't know what the way that I'm trying to say that, because it's not like you're practicing lighter because you have a new player. But if you're just, from a playbook standpoint, working on fewer things in the get-go with her there, does that mean that that's a time that is also good to get Caitlin Clark back into the mix?
I'd have to fully ask Stephanie White this question, because based off of how they approached the season in leading up in camp and whatnot, they wanted to play a very similar style of basketball that the Pacers play, very free-flowing and kind of read and react, versus, hey, we're going to break the ball up the court and we're going to run play three or, run whatever set. They may have things they want to do, and it may be similar across the WNBA. It's just a matter of just how they phrase it and what words they use to describe whatever the play is. So I think most of the stuff they do already just is kind of feeds off of, without Caitlin Clark speaking, that is right now, is that they use Aaliyah Boston a lot in the pick and roll. They try to get her the ball at the free throw line or at the top of the key, let her make decisions and kind of be the quote-unquote central hub to their offense. And so I think it makes it very easy for Odyssey Sims to come right in and have an impactful role within this team, because we've seen it with Ari McDonald. Jake, when they went down earlier in the year underneath, the 10 players available, they brought her in on the emergency hardship contract, and she immediately had success. She came in off the bench, she played about 10 minutes a game to start. Next thing you know, she becomes a regular fixture in the rotation after they bring her back for the rest of the season, and she ends up starting, and unfortunately now she's out for the remainder of the season. But I think there's an avenue to where Odyssey Sims, being the veteran that she is, can just step right in and have a role immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly be her hope, right? And for the time being, she's going to have to, right?
I'm interested in this part too, because I've gotten conflicting things on this from the couple of different people I've talked with. Right now, because with the way that the WNBA works, Jake, is these emergency hardship contracts only come into play when you have under 10 active players. So without Sydney Colson and without Ari McDonald, they were at 9 in their game against Chicago on Saturday, and Caitlin Clark, obviously. So when Caitlin Clark comes back, that means they have 10 available players. And I had one person tell me it doesn't matter that Odyssey Sims will be here for the rest of the season because of where they're at right now. And I had somebody else tell me that once Caitlin Clark returns, then Odyssey Sims will have to be released because they will hit the criteria for the minimum 10 available players. So we're going to have to ask Stephanie White, and hopefully she can give us clarification on that.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but when I got hired here, they listed my contract as hardship.
Really?
Yeah, they looked at my status in life, and they're like, you know what, you're in a hardship spot. Charity is actually what they listed it as. But good question. We'll get into that. Another good question. With the text line, 239-1070. So basically the same number that you use to call in and interact with the show, you can text to. And we see the texts.
Of course, don't text and drive, please.
That's right. But someone just, and this feels like sports radio talk show crutch of like, so should Pete Rose be a Hall of Famer? Your calls. Class basketball, your calls. That's always the, who's on your Mount Rushmore? Your calls. And taking a question that is asked on the text line to us and saying, you know what, that's better than anything that I'd come up with right now, sounds like sports talk radio crutch. But this is such a good question. It is such a good question that we have to address. There are great questions in life. What came first, the chicken or the egg?
What size is Eddie's head?
What does Eddie really wear an 8.5 hat? What is the meaning of life? If you
What
were
goes
a
on in
tree,
Jake Query's brain?
what kind of tree would you be? What's on my mind? These are all fabulous questions. And my last name is Query. So by nature, it is designed that I am to be able to understand a great question.
Do you feel like your last name has a impact on who you are, Jake?
I think very few people understand what my last name means, but it does feel like I'm inquisitive by nature. Now, let me tell you.
Would you be inquisitive by nature if you were Jake Garrison?
No, I just have a huge cranium, and and I would be wondering if my little brother was, what time he was going to be done with his Fever postgame obligations. And I'm going to tell you what the question was, but just since you mentioned the inquisitive nature, let me tell you a great compliment that I received.
Is it a compliment?
Yes, I think it was a compliment, and I'm going to call him out for it. Ryan Marine, who does and is outstanding, does IndyCar radio with me. Ryan Marine and I went back to the airport together after the race in Portland. And we were talking about certain drivers and their popularity level and why some drivers are more popular than others. And Ryan's like, there's just like an it charisma factor with some. We're talking about Pato O'Ward. Mm-hmm. He's like, he just has an it charisma factor. He's like, I don't know what it is, but he just has this ability that when you meet him or whatever else, that people automatically are drawn to him. I go, okay. So before we were going to the airport, we stopped to get something to eat, and we went into this kind of burger bar, cool place in Portland. Wayfinder, if you're ever in the area, by the way, is the name of it. So we go in and we sit down, and there was a couple next to us. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but there's a couple next to us, and so we're sitting there waiting on our food and having a beer and a Coke, and I get to talking to this couple next to us, and we start talking about their upbringing in the Pacific Northwest, and they just moved back from the Tahoe area, whatever. And we had like an hour to kill while we're eating, so we're talking to them. Really fun conversation. And we're leaving, and Ryan says to me, you remember when I was speaking about Pato O'Ward and the charisma? And I go, yeah. And he said, I don't mean this to be creepy, but you have that exact same thing in terms of like that conversation with those people. They acted like they've known you forever. And I said, well, that's just because I'm inquisitive. And I can ask people questions to get to know them a little bit. And maybe that's because of my last name. It was a great compliment from Ryan, truth be told. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I took it as a great compliment. But as somebody who asks people questions, both for a living and also to start conversation, when I see a great question, I say to myself, that is a great question, a great one. And I will tell you what that great question was, and we will actually discuss its elusive answer on the other side. And Stephanie White in 18 minutes. By the way, Pacers' schedule announced in terms of their opener, and I have unpopular opinion on that because they open up with Oklahoma City. But the question that was asked to us, and I looked at it and immediately said, that is a fabulous question. Fabulous question. Who wins more games this season? The Indiana Fighting Football Hoosiers or the Indianapolis Colts? That is a really good question.
Now, should we have the caveat in this, Jake, if regular season or the entire season for
regular
Indiana?
Season. Either way, regular season. Oh, you're talking about for Indiana, right?
Yeah, for Indiana.
Well, Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1990, so even if they were to make one. But in this, hopefully this year they snap that. But regular season, because you would put the over-under for the Colts at probably around, what is their over-under in Vegas? I would say 9.5. What is it?
7.5. 7.5.
Boy. Eddie, we're going to do with you, with the Colts, what we did with Indiana football. You ready? Now, you're not going to be held accountable for this. Don't worry. You're not held accountable for anything, truth be told. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
I'm going to read off the schedule to you, and I just need you to tell me instinctively. Don't break it down. Don't sit here and this and that. We're assuming that all teams are healthy, etc. I'm going to name the game, and you simply tell me. You simply tell me win or loss for the Colts. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Miami Dolphins at home.
Loss.
Denver Broncos at home.
Loss.
At Tennessee.
Win.
At the Rams.
Loss.
Las Vegas Raiders at home.
Win.
Arizona Cardinals at home.
Win.
Los Angeles Chargers in L.A.
Loss.
Tennessee Titans at home.
Win.
Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh.
Loss.
At Atlanta.
That's the Germany or wherever they're playing.
You're right. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Loss.
Sorry about that. Un Atlanta. How do you say in, or how do you say versus in German?
No idea.
Ach, Atlanta. And what did you go with for that?
I went loss.
Okay. Chiefs and Arrowhead.
Loss.
Texans at home.
I'll say win.
Jaguars in Jacksonville.
Loss.
At Seattle.
I'll go win.
Niners at home.
Loss.
Jaguars at home.
Win.
At Houston.
Boy, that's a tough one. I'll go loss with an asterisk there just because if Houston's got the division wrapped up going into that final game,
here's the thing.
You don't anticipate them playing many other starters.
This is why Vegas is undefeated.
I had 7, didn't I?
Vegas over under 7.5. You have them at 7 with an asterisk possibility of 8.
And when we did the exercise about IU football last week, I had them at 9-3. 9-3.
You have them at 9 wins, however many games they play. So you're going IU. That is a fabulous question. The Colts have talent. One of the things that jumps out at me about the Colts in terms of their opener, okay? When you look at their schedule, I'm going to read off for you the first 5 games again. Ready? You ready, Eddie? Miami, Denver, at Tennessee, at the Rams, Vegas. Then Arizona at home. Then at L.A., and then the Titans at home. By October 26th, they will have played 1, 2, 3, I guess realistically, 5. And I know that that's still like literally just like half, but it feels like their schedule is very home game front-loaded. And they have to then go on the road a lot at the end of the year, at the time when they most need to find footing. I realize that all balances out in the wash. And I think they have talent, but just so much of it depends on the quarterback play. And that's just so – and look, they may get great quarterback play. I don't know. That's the unknown. Now, speaking of schedules, and I mentioned the Pacers opening up with Oklahoma City in October. It is Oklahoma City's second game. It is the Pacers opener.
Mm-hmm.
I have an unpopular opinion. And I want you to tell me if, folks, you can text me at 239-1070 or at my cell phone number, which also we use, either one, and let me know if this is the dumbest thing that you have ever heard.
317-523-9288.
Correct. 317-523-9288. Tell me if this is the dumbest thing you've ever heard. I am like, the Pacers, to me, that run was special, and I'll remember it for a long time. And I don't need to revisit for everybody what, for me personally and people in this town, that meant. And for it to recapture my sports fandom. And it had been a long time since I was that invested emotionally in a team. And I'm the first to admit it. Guilty as charged. And I put my professionalism to the side and just said, I am all in as a fan. And I loved everything about that run except for the way that it ended. But even then, as I talked about the next day, I chose to actually reflect upon the things that we were afforded as opposed to the things that we were denied. Okay? There is a part of me. We've all had moments that were special. I remember my 20th year high school reunion. All of my buddies came back into town. We went to my parents' house like we had done on graduation night. We reenacted the photo of our graduation night in the backyard in the same spot. We went to the reunion and saw people we hadn't seen forever. Everybody was on their A game. Every joke landed for everyone. It was a special night, and therefore we couldn't wait till the 25th. And 5 years later, we went to that one, and it was fun. But it's like we were chasing that 20th. And there was so much promise about it. And then it was like, it was cool, but we can't replicate what was the magic the first time. And part of me, with the Pacers opening up against the Oklahoma City Thunder, last year was so special and so much fun. And you keep forgetting that Tyrese Halliburton's not going to be available for a year. So you get excited about the upcoming season. Like, let's one more half, and then you're like, oh, gosh, I forgot. Halliburton's not playing, and Turner's not there, and the team's going to look different, and we'll see, and this is a gap year and whatever else. And just when you start to absorb that hard part about it, there's part of me that is almost reluctant to open the year up, and it is bittersweet, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth for it to open up against Oklahoma City, because if they win that game, you're going to say to yourself, oh, my gosh, it's cool they won it now, but if they just, one half, they were a half away. And it almost makes it's almost too soon. Does that make sense? It's too soon. Oklahoma City, and they're not some bitter rival, but just the excitement and the anticipation and the buildup and the promise and all of it that goes into the fact that they were so close, and we just need time to kind of ease into next year without two of the big players being involved anyway, and we're going to be forced to immediately relive right back into it. And while I should be excited and I should be grateful and I should be optimistic, and I'm all of those things, but I'm worried that that's just going to be weird. Am I the only one that sees it that way? Am I the only one that sees that as, yeah, can we just maybe have slid that in like in mid-December? I'm happy to have a primetime nationally televised game for the Pacers to open the season, but could we maybe have done it against Milwaukee or against Cleveland or Boston and not necessarily immediately be harpened back to what could have been? But again, I'm going to focus not on what could have been, but on what was, and it was a special run. But I was curious if I was the only one that felt that way. Stephanie White, by the way, Fever in action tonight. Stephanie White joins us next. Okay, we have good news and bad news here in our visit with head coach of the Fever, Stephanie White. Fever in action tonight, taking on Dallas. They have won, coming back, snapping a 2-game skid with their win over the weekend with Chicago. 7:30 tonight against Dallas. And here's the good news, Eddie. The good news is when I asked Coach Stephanie White what music she'd like to hear, we got her off the country. That's the good news, right? The bad news is she went with that song.
What do you have against that song? Come on
It's
now.
just, I mean, like, I like the genre. I just don't like that particular song. So Stephanie White joining us now. Obviously, Stephanie, that's a song of your liking, correct? Is there a history with that song?
I mean, I'm a '90s child, so I used to listen to Blackstreet. I'm showing my versatility too. I'm not
Okay.
sure why
Fair.
we've been on a country kick lately. But I was like, let's go back. Let's bring it back to the '90s. And there are a number that ran through my head, and that one was the top of the list.
So, true story. Yesterday, someone comes up to me and sings to me. They said, "Oh, by the way, I saw you walking down the hall." And I'm thinking, where did they see me walking down the hall? And then they said, "I'm just kidding. That's a line from an Oasis song. And I know that you went to go see them because how did Stephanie White not know Oasis?" And I said, "Yeah, see, exactly." So and then the thing that most stunned me is that meant that somebody besides my mom was listening to the radio show.
Listening to the show.
Right, which I was thrilled about, right? Hey, I want to begin with, and obviously one of the topics of conversation is going to be talking about the latest signing for the Fever. But before we go there, Coach, I want to talk about, and I mean this with all sincerity, the cool signings that you guys did. And I don't mean Odyssey Sims because we're going to get to that. But I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I know it's not new or unique to the franchise. I think you guys have done it before. But to be able to sign not one, not two, but 5 new members of the Fever as part of the Special Olympics Indiana that you guys did yesterday, I thought was awesome. And I would assume for you that had to be as much a privilege of anything that you do over the course of the basketball season.
It absolutely was. And to see these young women come in and watch practice and the signing of the contracts after practice and their excitement and our team's excitement and welcoming them into our team and into our family. It was. I mean, everything that we do certainly is about basketball, but most things that we do are bigger than basketball, and that was certainly one of them. And the impact that you can make in the lives of others is top of the list, and it really was a cool experience.
So obviously from the roster standpoint for you guys, Odyssey Sims is a player, and I hate to say signed to a hardship contract because it makes it sound like it was some sort of a charitable thing. It's not that. It's the fact that you guys were, from a standpoint of roster limit, etc., you had a unique situation in the fact that 2 players went down. We'll get to that. But in terms of Odyssey Sims, when you lose 2 players and you've got to go out and get a point guard, was it a factor for you? This is a player in Odyssey Sims who has been a very good player in the WNBA and plays the position of need in distributing the basketball. But one of the things I found interesting, and I wanted to know if this was a factor in the selection of her, is this is not unique to her either. And by that, I mean the challenge of joining a team in the middle of the season and just kind of being airdropped into the fray. She has experience with that. Is that something that also factors in to making this an easier transition?
It absolutely is. She has had experience with this. She is a plug and play type of player who can come in and make plays for herself, make plays for others, pick up on offenses, really quickly. She adds a dimension that we need. And, one of the things when we added Ari McDonald was she gave us another player who can get downhill, who can get to the rim, who can play with speed, and Odyssey Sims can do those things as well. And having a complement to Kelsey and somebody else that you can put the ball in her hands to make a play was important for us. And Odyssey Sims is somebody who has been in this situation off and on throughout her career in this league. She's a scorer, she's a playmaker, and seemed like an ideal fit for the situation that we were in.
Which is, Coach, from a coaching standpoint, which sometimes can be a bigger challenge? Keeping everybody focused and morale high when you're not playing well, and you guys have gone through periods of that this year, or trying to keep everybody together and focused on the end goal when you have two really important pieces go down to injury. So, Aaron and McDonald and Sidney Colson, and just knowing what that means for their teammates.
I think they each present challenges. Probably, when you're struggling and you may or you may not be playing up to your potential, or you're going through some tough times, on the floor. I think that is more challenging because you have the pieces and you just got to get it together. And I think now the situation that we're in, it's challenging in its own way, but I think each situation lends itself to really just the type of people that we have on our team. Like, we have a very strong culture. We have a very connected and resilient group. They rise to the occasion when we face adversity, and they pull together when we face adversity, and all of those things are important. And we've seen it through the course of different situations that we've been in through injury and roster changes and all of that. And we've seen it when we've gone through some slumps and some slides, just navigating and finding our way. It's a mentally tough group, and they have continued to stay together. They've continued to stay the course, and they've continued to put one foot in front of the other and be where their feet are. And all of those things matter, and all of those things are the reason that we're in the position that we're in.
I've always marveled. Stephanie White is our guest, head coach of the Fever. They're in action tonight, taking on Dallas, 7:30 tip. I've always marveled, Coach, at professional athletes at their, and I think I noticed this from a media standpoint, from a football standpoint, of talking to players and hearing them start to speak in a jargon that was I was a foreign language to me, and realizing the intellect capacity that goes into elite level athlete of understanding the nuances of offenses and complexities that go into it. In the basketball standpoint, how long typically does it take a player to learn a playbook, so to speak, or in reality, is everybody kind of running the same sets but just under kind of different disguise?
Yeah, I mean, I think anymore the set is just what creates the spacing, and it's actions within the spacing. And most teams are running similar actions. It's just positioning on the floor, spacing, where you manipulate and maneuver to create the most spacing to get people in their sweet spots, so to speak, to use their innate abilities. And so I think all things are very similar. I think for us, how we do things defensively sometimes can be a little bit outside the norm. Some things can be, and more than anything, it's verbiage and language and terminology and all of those things that are different. So when you're acclimating a player, it's about terminology. When you're implementing systems, like for our system, offensively, defensively, we're probably only going to be at level one throughout the course of this year. It's being able to get to that next level once you have familiarity with it, and in the next level reads, next level actions. Year one is putting in the base level, and then the years beyond that, 2, 3, whatever it may be, is continuing to dive deeper into the more nuanced aspects of what we do. So, I think for us, the ability to implement new players is mostly about terminology and about what we do on the defensive end.
How much of a play at the WNBA level in an offensive possession in a half court, okay? How often is it just one play that's designed, and then if the defense takes that away, then it's up to everybody to just kind of free flow react to it? Or does a play have an immediate alternate play where everyone on the floor knows, okay, if we're going away from that original action, now we're into play B that is matched with that one as the alternate? How often are you doing a designed set versus immediately going into a free flow?
You're so old school with your play verbiage, your play terminology.
I'm old school about everything.
I am too.
Except for the music,
really,
apparently.
Apparently. Well, you're old school like 80s. I'm, old school like
Listen, we can drop the school. I'm old. We'll just go with old.
But no, it really, for us, it's about actions, and how teams play us determines the action. And so if we make a pass to a wing, for example, based on how a team is playing us, that can lead to 2 or 3 different actions. So
Okay.
if somebody is jumping to the ball, that can lead to one thing. If somebody is keeping us from coming off of a handoff, that can lead to another thing. Or if we reverse it to the middle of the floor, and we got a matchup that we like, it can lead to a fade screen versus a pin down, or it can lead to a dribble handoff versus an on-ball screen.
So it's a matter of making sure, is it not then, Coach, that all 5 players know exactly what the instinctive reaction of motion is, right?
Yeah, it is, and or being able to play off of the initial cutter's reaction, right? So if like, if somebody, if Caitlin, for example, makes a pass to AB in the middle of the floor and she comes off for a handoff, then that signifies one thing. If she receives a fade screen,
Right.
that signifies another screen thing. If she cuts it, that signifies the next action.
I mean, and that to me is what is amazing, is I think that we don't give players enough credit for I'm going to say muscle memory for lack of a better phrase, but just the natural fluidity of all of that happening before our eyes. I think people think that players just go out and you roll the ball out and it's like, let's go. And it is just so much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, well, I think you can see when those things happen and it's let's go instead of flow. You see over dribbling, right? You see a lot of standing, and those are moments that happen. There's no doubt about it. They happen when there's a decision. They happen when maybe you freeze, when defenses do a couple of different things. I mean, most teams are going to be good enough defensive teams to force you into second and third actions, and the great defensive teams force you to get the ball, from baseline to baseline in the half court with 4 to 5 actions. And so I think that the nuanced part of it is what takes the time, right? You can get the obvious part, and for the casual fan, the obvious is what they expect, and the obvious is what they see. But in order to get to the nuanced part of it, which most really good teams are going to force you to get to, it takes time.
So when you have an Odyssey Sims on the floor who is new to what you're trying to do, those actions, instead of, say, 3 or 4 options, how much do you have to then kind of simplify things down towards just running, like, say, a routine that she would be accustomed to?
Yeah, I would say you definitely do. 1 to 2 actions, 2 to 3 sets that are going to fit what she does, that create the spacing to allow her to do what she does best. I mean, the thing that you want to do as a coach is you want to allow players to play to their instincts. So, the sets that we run on the floor, different areas of spacing might be different with certain players. You see it, we're different with Caitlin off the floor than we are when she's on the floor with some of the things that we run, some of the sets that we run. And they'll be different for Odyssey. And our goal is to simplify it to her, to give her, 3 to 4 things that she can run with 1 to 2 actions within those things that she can run, that allow her to be her best and allow her to help our team be our best.
Hey, how are Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson doing? And I don't mean that physically. I just mean with the disappointment psychologically of being out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to speak for them, but as someone who has gone through injury and the different types of injuries that they're going through, I think the biggest thing is it is disappointing. It is gut-wrenching, because, number one, you're taking away something that you love to do. Number two, as an injured athlete, you miss some of the things that make being a part of a team great. It can be so isolating. You're going through the rehab process. You're at different points in your career. You're both with a new team and feeling really great about your situations. And so I can imagine it's unnerving. It's heartbreaking. And then as most athletes do, you have to turn the page to the what's next, and the rehab, the surgeries, and then the rehab after that, and getting yourself back to being the athlete, right, that you were and that you are. And there's so many steps to that process. And so, we just continue to hold them close and continue to pour into them like they do to us, and continue to encourage them and be there for them.
Coach, last week we chatted about just like the togetherness and the overall love that this team has for one another. I know oftentimes you talk about Sophie Cunningham and her ability on the floor, but how much is she meant to just the locker room presence of her off the court this year?
She's huge. She is. I mean, she's an energy giver. She's someone who is a genuinely happy person. She's a connector. She understands, how to bring people together. She understands how to keep people together. When to push different buttons, so to speak, and when we need kind of to sharpen up. And from a leadership standpoint, she does not just the obvious things, but a lot of the intangibles. And she's a glue person in our locker room. She's just a naturally giving person. And I think that when you have connectors on your team like that, and not to mention she's a high IQ player, she can play multiple positions. It helps keep people together. I mean, she's a big reason why this group has been so resilient, and she does hold us all together at times.
How pleased were you, not just from a coaching standpoint, but just from a basketball standpoint, of seeing, in the Chicago game, and notably Kelsey Mitchell, I guess Sophie to an extent as well, but players having to kind of step outside normal role or normal comfort zone of what they do offensively to fill the void until you were able to go out, obviously, and ultimately get Caitlin back. We'll get to that, and then sign Odyssey Sims. But for players to step into areas that might not be their norm, for you to be able to watch that.
It's huge, and it makes us as coaches really proud. I think the challenge is you don't want people to think that they have to do everything, right? It's like if everybody can give 1% more, if everybody can take 1% more responsibility, and you don't want to, because Kelsey and Natasha Howard specifically, those two have been really in such good grooves. You want to allow them to continue to play through their strengths and not have to play outside of, a comfort zone and instinct and all of that. And so, you adjust and run things a little bit more through Sophie, run things a little bit more through AB, which we've been doing most of the season anyway. That still allows Kelsey and Atash specifically to do what they do best. And it's not significant outside of your comfort zone, right? It's, hey, let's grab 1 to 2 more rebounds. Let's get paint touches 1 to 2 more times within a single possession. The ball move, instead of 1 second basketball, it's got to be 0.5 basketball. Hey, let's dig in as far as, 1 or 2 different defensive coverages. I was just really pleased with that. And for our players to step outside their comfort zone with the zone that we played, and to adapt to it so quickly, and, be able to communicate and have activity level on the defensive end of the floor. That was the biggest challenge and biggest change for us, was what we did on the defensive end of the floor. And they were outstanding. I mean, I continue to, I know every time it sounds a little cheesy every time I'm on the show, but I continue to be just so proud of this group and their flexibility and their resilience.
Okay, I'm going to list for you the top 10 musical selling artists of the 90s. I want you to tell me if 90s Stephanie White was listening to them driving around. You ready?
Got it. Yep.
Shania Twain.
Yep. Got it. Yes. Her.
Madonna.
Yes.
Backstreet Boys.
Yes. Backstreet Boys. Uh-huh.
Metallica.
Instinct has to be there, right? No, Metallica, no.
Okay. Michael Jackson.
Yes, Michael Jackson.
Nirvana.
Some Nirvana.
Whitney Houston.
Yes, absolutely.
Garth Brooks. We covered that one.
Yes.
Mariah Carey.
Mariah Carey, yes.
Would you like to guess number 1?
Let's go.
It's a little bit unfair because I feel like it's one big song from this artist that catapulted them to number 1. But go ahead.
Yeah, that has to be Shania Twain.
No, Shania Twain was 10. But I think here's a hint. I think of this person like in the same grouping as Shania Twain.
You do?
Yes. Like not necessarily.
Mariah Carey?
Like literally, I feel like it's. Like if we're talking like Cheryl Swoop, Cheryl Miller, Cynthia, like same era players here, right? Like kind of same genre music, in my opinion. Because
Same
I think
genre.
is Shania Twain is.
Females in there.
Here's a dumb question: is Shania Twain Canadian?
She is.
Okay, I believe this artist is also Canadian, and I think that's where I'm lumping them in my head.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea who.
Celine Dion.
Oh, okay, yes, and I love Celine Dion. I saw Celine Dion in Vegas.
Did you really? Did she just sing that Titanic song for 2.5 hours and then leave?
No, she has a lot of great songs. I saw her in Nashville as well a number of years ago.
Okay.
Is amazing.
Okay, I think we might have discussed this one before. Hootie and the Blowfish, yay or nay?
Yeah, yay Hootie. Yes.
Okay, that's our next one, Eddie. Hootie and the
Got
Blowfish. Hootie and the Blowfish next. And I promise next time I won't mention the picket fence when asking about offenses. You know what I mean? I got to get more in the new school, right?
You do. Yes, you do.
I'm trying to step out of the 90s.
So we can chant Ali. Ali.
That's exactly right. Just knock this one down. Don't pay attention, and we'll go all the way.
Exactly. That's right.
Coach, appreciate it. Tonight, 7:30 against Dallas. Best of luck. Always appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Stephanie White joining us on the program here. Again, Eddie will be on the pregame for you at 7:30. And by the way, we did get the answer. I do believe, by the way, Eddie, that in terms of the question as to whether or not now, because they have signed Odyssey Sims to the hardship contract, whether or not that means they would have to release her once Caitlin Clark comes back. And there is no status. I should have asked that. There is no update on Caitlin Clark, not yet practicing, so things are status quo there. And Stephanie White had made that clear yesterday. But because there are two players they lost, and you have Odyssey Sims and then Caitlin Clark, I think that still keeps them at the same number, right? They're good in that regard. I don't believe that she would have to be released because two out, two in.
I don't think so. I think you're right, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm pretty sure that's correct. 2 out and 2 in. Stephen Holder going to join us 2 o'clock. We mentioned the Colts. They have a bit of a situation that you could say is, obviously anytime you have attrition on the roster, it's a negative. But there is a silver lining. There's a potential positive that could come from that. And if you think about outside right now, it's still nice out, right? We're landlocked, but I believe it's still a beautiful day outside. Is it not? We don't have a window here, but I think
86 and mostly cloudy, according to my phone.
Oh, cloudy?
Mostly cloudy, according to my phone.
But not raining, right?
That is true.
If you take the 86 degrees, you subtract, we'll subtract 28 degrees from that, okay? That puts us at, what, 58, right? We'll take away the clouds, and so it's sunny. 58 and sunny. That'd be freezing right now, but if it's mid-March, that's a beautiful day. Windows rolled down, one of those days where I tell you that we're going to play nothing but songs, of bounce-back songs that are roll down the window type music. That we love that spring fever, summer's around the corner feel, right? Or for that matter, spring has arrived feel. And if you think about right now what that feels like, what that smells like, what that looks like, it's Selection Sunday. It's the week leading up to the greatest weekend in sports, the opening week of the NCAA tournament, and Selection Sunday. And it's very hard right now to remember what that feels and smells like. But for the Colts, Selection Sunday kind of plays into their roster, which I mentioned earlier, and we will go back over that again on the other side. of the day, Eddie? Is that what we're doing?
I guess so, Jake. That's fine
This
with me.
song, I will admit to you this. This is not unlike the 100-mile song or 500-mile song. This is a turn-up song for me. I will admit.
Really?
Yes.
So when's the next time you're in the car with track dude Michael Young?
Okay. Thank you for mentioning him, because did you hear what happened to him over the weekend?
No.
Let me tell you. If I'm track dude Michael Young, but to answer your question, the next time I will be in the car with him will be in Milwaukee. What makes you ask?
Play that song for him.
Doesn't like that song?
Just play it for him.
Well, he may do what, when I tell you in about 8 minutes what happened to him over the weekend, you're going to see him in a totally different light.
Now, is this in 8 minutes because that's how long it's going to take you to explain it, or in 8 minutes that's because when you're actually going to tell me?
The latter.
Okay.
But noted on the sarcasm. Hang on. Okay. The Colts have a situation with the cornerback room. We've talked plenty about the quarterback room.
I mean, they have a situation there too, right?
They do. But in the cornerback position, that was one that we felt pretty good about going into the year. You know, I remember a year ago when Chris Ballard sat there and said, I like our young guys at this position, but we got to see them play. I've got to see them play to know truly what I have. Fair point, okay? Fair point. And he got pretty criticized because it didn't necessarily work out for him. Because they, again, last year, attrition, reared its ugly head and et cetera. But he went out, to his credit, you get Ward. You go out from a defensive back standpoint, you sign Cam Bynum, and they shored up in a lot of ways the areas that we had wanted them to shore up. You already had Jalen Jones. I do like Juju Brents. They had some depth there. And then, of course, obviously, Kenny Moore goes without saying. I mean, we know, what Kenny Moore can do at the nickel. And now you have a situation where Jalen Jones is hurt, Juju Brents is hurt, Kenny Moore is now hurt. None of these appear to be anything that's going to go really deep into the season, but you don't know. Nick Cross is a guy that you're still, I think they see a lot of promise in, but you're waiting to see exactly who he is. Hunter Wohler looks like he's going to be a player. So they have some depth there. But that attrition and the possibility of not only having to move somebody up, and whether that may be, for example, Jonathan Edwards, who's an undrafted free agent, and it's right behind Jalen Jones. He's pushing Jalen Jones a little bit. Jalen Jones gets hurt. So Jonathan Edwards now suddenly is a guy that maybe you look at as a fringe roster player, and you're now at a situation where you basically have to look into, and he might have made the roster anyway, but now it's almost a certainty he makes the roster. Not only because you may need him to play right away, but also because you clearly need insurance at that position. Now, where this fits into Selection Sunday comparison with the NCAA tournament is this. If you look at other areas where the Colts had luxury of depth and guys that they liked, Jelani Woods is I heard Kevin mention this morning. I thought it was a very good point with the Jelani Woods. If Jelani Woods is a player, if the Colts are looking at the tight end situation, they're like, okay, we got Tyler Warren, obviously, right? Then they like Mo Alley Cox because of his blocking ability. They like Drew Ogletree because of kind of his combo of the two. And then Will Mallory has had not only a really good camp, but I think when reps have been thrown his way in regular season play, he's been good. So you have those four. Now, Jelani Woods is interesting because he's a big target. He seemingly was a slightly more athletic Mo Alley Cox. And he has missed 2 years due to injury, and they've waited all that time clearly there's something there that they either really like or were really intrigued by. And now that he's healthy, let's say he's one that for that reason, they're like, we're going to go ahead and go 5 tight ends. We're going to keep 5 tight ends on the roster. Well, this is where Selection Sunday comes in, because a Jonathan Edwards or a corner that you now need for the sake of either depth or just insurance, or because you aren't going to release one of your guys that's hurt, that's a bid stealer. That's a roster spot stealer. That literally is 18-12 Samford surprisingly winning their league and denying a 32-3 team an automatic. And so then a Jelani Woods, or even at the running back position. And I know running back, I mean, they are obviously very good there with Jonathan Taylor, and then Tyler Goodson, I think we can safely say is the backup. And you probably go 3 and you keep DJ Giddens, who has shown promise as a rookie. And then me personally, the guy that I think should be starting, Ulysses Bentley the fourth.
No. It's what, Jake?
It's Ulysses Bentley. As a matter of fact, I'm understanding the young lad just bought new chaps just for the event. But you look at that situation though, like if you were going to go 3 backs, for example, and now you've got to go with an extra corner, is that a bid stealer? You can look at it and say they have the luxury of depth at corner to offset these injuries or this attrition, except for what it's doing is it's potentially denying you depth elsewhere. And that's the thing that Jelani Woods now, like I said, I think he's in real trouble here. And I'm not saying he would have made the roster in general. But even a Will Mallory, I mean, I think you go 4 tight ends, but it just depends on when this happens, how far down, where do you make up the space elsewhere? Because it's going to happen. And there are other spots, the line is another area. Right now, they're pretty healthy line-wise, but what if you get an injury or 2 there? And then all of a sudden, you have somebody that you thought was probably on the outside looking in, and you've got to bring them along. You got to bring them to the party now.
Jake, I've been around you too long. I get overly Freudian now on everything. I look too far into things.
I don't think I'm guilty of that at all.
And when I listen to whatever it's, Shane Steichen or it's Jim Bob Cooter, and they're asking about the tight ends, the one guy they always fail to mention is Jelani Woods. Like they'll say, they'll talk about Mo, they'll talk about Drew, they'll talk about Will Mallory, they'll obviously talk about Tyler, but the one guy they always fail to mention is Jelani Woods. Is that me reading too far into it?
No, I think there's probably, unfortunately for Jelani Woods, something to be said there.
And not to mention, like with him being so injury riddled in his career, like is he at the point where you can maybe let him go and stash him on the practice squad, or because I would think of the two between Jelani Woods and Will Mallory, I don't think Will Mallory would make it to the practice squad. I think somebody else would pick him up.
Oh, I agree with that. I think Will Mallory's safe. I think he's done enough here. Now, somebody asked a good question here. Could the Colts grab a linebacker from the league roster cuts? I think absolutely. I mean, there are going to be surprise releases or guys that they really like. And, yes, that's the other thing. When you first find a set roster, whatever it may be, you have to then look at that, like the Colts roster, the 53-man, once it's finalized, the last 2 or 3 are always in jeopardy, right? Because somebody all of a sudden gets released elsewhere in a position to need, and they're like, you know what? Boom, we got to get that guy. There's a linebacker depth, or there's a receiver depth. But linebacker's an interesting spot because it does feel like it has become like me with offensive verbiage, a little more old school, right? Is linebacker today's running back?
It just doesn't feel like Lou Anarumo values that position well with his scheme.
Because I would agree with that. And in football in general today, Eddie, do you remember 3 or 4 years ago, literally the most common talking point amongst the NFL was that the running back had become a passé position. And you wonder if linebacker is not that right now.
I mean, just not even like 10 years ago, you were talking about Patrick Willis, you were talking about Ray Lewis. And
Yeah.
some of those, like Brian Urlacher, some of like the greatest
faces of their teams, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Jake, how many quarterbacks do they keep? 3.
Ooh, you think Riley Leonard would make the 53?
Well, no, don't they get but I'm sorry, they get the one that goes onto the practice squad, and they're allowed like the emergency quarterback situation or whatever. That's who it'll be.
Okay.
That's who. But he is in front of Jason Bean for sure.
Well, yeah, I don't think Jason Bean's getting consistent reps at all because he didn't play in that preseason game against Baltimore last week.
Let me tell you something. I don't wish for any player to be released in the NFL, and they're going to make good money regardless of whatever else. I don't wish for anyone to get hurt in the NFL or any sport. But as difficult as some things may be in sports, I don't think anything is more difficult than what happened to Michael Young, track dude Michael Young. When I tell you what happened to him, Eddie, when I tell you what happened, I would like for you to make a list of what you, aside from physical harm, okay, or, brutality, if you were, aside from physical harm, that's the easiest way to say it, what happened to Michael Young yesterday is the worst thing that can happen to a human being.
Wait, it was yesterday?
Yeah, it was, yes, he came back yesterday. I came back on a red eye. He came back yesterday, early in the morning. When I tell you next what it is, you are going to agree with me and say, that's the worst thing I've heard.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do it next. So I think most people know in radio locally of track dude Michael Young. I think he's been on with John several times. And, great dude. I mean, just an awesome teammate, awesome coworker, fun guy. Michael does turn number 2 for the Indy 500, and I do turn number 3. And he works, with us on IndyCar Radio. I work with him on IndyCar Radio. And so he is not, I am, and he is not. I'm a red-eye guy. Like when a race is over with, the race begins for me to get home. And Michael's more of a, hey, I want to sleep, get a good night's sleep, I'll fly back the next day kind of guy. Totally cool. So I came back from Portland on the red-eye Sunday night. Michael went ahead and stayed the night in Portland and came back on Monday afternoon. And so I, yesterday do the show and just kind of doing my deal, right? And I happened to see like a notice on Facebook or something from Michael Young. Oh, okay. Well, check this out and see what Michael's up to. I hadn't talked to him yet. He sends the following. Now, remember I told you, Eddie, that when I was coming back and I was getting ready to board the plane, somebody noticed that I had a nick in my leg and it was geysering blood because I'm on the blood thinners, right?
Oh, no.
And I had I told you about this, right?
Yeah, you did.
I had the napkins and I'm wiping them down, and then I had a Band-Aid on my arm because I had a bruise that was embarrassing. This is what you have to look forward to once you're on the thinners. And so I took the Band-Aid off of my arm, dealt with people seeing the bruise, and moved the Band-Aid over to the nick on my leg. And then I thought, I wonder if I can board the plane if I've got like blood on my leg. And so they didn't see it, but I mean, I got it cleaned up, whatever. It was dried by then, not to be gross. But that pales in comparison to this. And so I called Michael after the fact when I read this and said, please tell me this, and he goes, oh no. So I would like for you, Eddie, did you think of what you think would be the worst possible scenario that you could encounter? Non-physical harm division.
Yes.
And harm to anybody else division, okay? I'm going to read for you what happened to Michael Young, and then I want you to tell me whether or not it pales, like if yours is worse or if this is worse. I think this is the worst thing possible.
Okay.
Michael Young, by the way, who's at the dentist right now, and I don't care if he's getting root canal without Novocaine, that still is better than this. He posts this yesterday, and then I talked to him. I immediately called him. Getting to the point in life where I don't see many firsts anymore. Okay? So that means whatever it was is the first time that Michael's experienced it, right?
You see, I saw the post on Facebook, but I didn't read it. I just went right over it.
Happened to report a young lady. I can't even read without laughing. It's so insane. Happened to report a young lady puked all over me on the plane.
Oh, my gosh.
Check that one off the bingo card. Now, here's the worst part about this, okay? So I call him, and I go, wait a minute. So let me get this straight. What happened? And he goes, oh. He's like, we're just about to take off, and this young lady, and he's like, I don't even think she was like 21. I think she was like 18 years old. He goes, this young lady comes in and sits in the middle seat between me. You always have this happen, Eddie, where you're about to take off and there's nobody in the middle seat and you're like, oh my gosh, I hit the lottery. Oh my gosh, I hit the lottery. And then at the last minute, somebody comes and sits down. It happened to me on the way back also. So he said this girl comes, sits down, basically passes out. Okay?
Yeah.
So they get up in the air and then she wakes up long enough to get out the little blue bag of wonder, right?
Yeah.
The blue bag that nobody ever actually has reached for that's sitting there in front, and she opens it up. And Michael is like, I thought maybe she had like popcorn or like gummy bears or something. And he's like, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's the puke bag. And then he said he thinks to himself, I smell vodka.
Oh, no.
Okay. And he's like, who's drinking vodka? And no sooner does he think that than she fills the bag. And then proceeds, and he said he's on the aisle. He and the window woman look at each other, and both their eyes get the size of silver dollars, and this girl fills up the blue bag. She has the presence of mind to then seal blue bag, and I don't know what you do with it, sets it down or puts it in her bag or whatever, right?
Ask for a flight attendant.
And Michael's like, okay. And then he's like, then I'm assuming she's reaching up to hit the call button for the flight attendant.
Oh, no.
But no, she's actually leaning left where Michael's on the aisle, mind you.
To grab his bag.
And there goes round 2 all over Michael. Now, here's the beauty of it. This is a flight, Eddie, from Portland, Oregon to Indianapolis, a 3-hour and 50-minute flight.
Oh, no, and this is at the start?
I don't know at what point in the flight this is, but Michael's like, oh, my gosh. So he goes back to the back of the plane, and they start giving him large bottles of soda water. And he's doing a soda water bath, and he said, like, he can't get enough on him to get all of this off of his shirt, out of his jeans, and everything else. And he says that once he goes through multiple bottles of this, he then, not unlike Gordy in Stand By Me, when he realizes there's one last leech, he looks down and realizes there's what appears to be a Cheeto stuck between his sock and his ankle.
No.
That has worked its way down. And it's a regurgitated Cheeto soaked in Smirnoff that has worked its way into the cavity of his feet. And he has to then reach down with his bare hands and
gross.
And pluck that bad boy out of there. And then, and this is the best part.
Oh, my God.
He has to then, so then he says, there's one guy who has an open seat. And Michael says, can I sit here? And the guy's like, why? Don't you have a seat? And Michael says, I'm in 32E, but the girl in 32D just puked all over me. Now, if you're a guy sitting there minding your own business and a guy wants to sit down next to you because he's been freshly doused with that, aren't you immediately saying, sayonara, buddy, back to 32 you go? So he has to then go sit next to Pukey McPuke for the rest of the flight, who then she immediately goes back to sleep.
Oh, my goodness.
That, and I mean, listen, I've been on a flight once where there was a medical emergency. I'm not making light of any of the actual severe, literally life-altering things that can happen on an airplane. But that particular thing is the biggest zero chance, right?
Oh, man. That's awful.
I mean, you've got to be kidding me, right? Now, I don't need to know what it was that you came up with in your mind, but is it worse or in comparison to awful things to happen to you? That has to be, what happened to Michael has to be worse, right? There can't be anything worse. Right?
Unless you're the one that did it to somebody else.
Yeah, that would be awful. Being the girl would be pretty bad, except for, can you imagine the humiliation of it?
Oh, man. A Cheeto? Ugh.
No thanks. Jake walks with Crimson Calf working turn 3, and Michael Young flies with Vomit Comet working in turn 2. Yeah. You also walk past a used needle after showering at the Beaverton gym. Not exactly a commercial. No, Portland is beautiful. Like, Portland is a cool city. It's a cool city. Listen, the things that plague Portland plague a lot of places. But that is absolutely horrific. Stephen Holder, by the way, mercifully joins us next. 2:00 in Indianapolis. Thank you to everybody that stuck it out after that story. But it is unbelievable. Poor Michael Young. No wonder he's at the – I wouldn't just be at the – if I was at the dentist right now, I'd be asking the dentist to just go ahead and put, like, Novocaine all over me and then, you know what I mean, shave an entire layer of my skin off after what happened yesterday. No thanks. Stephen Holder joins us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so. ESPN.com, where you can read his work. ESPN Television, where you can often see his work, especially this time of year. Stephen, I'm going to begin with a curveball question for you as it relates to college football and the NFL. It's a question I came up with earlier. Are you ready?
We'll see. We'll try.
Okay. True or false? The winner of the AFC South will be a franchise that plays in a state that is not represented in the college football playoff as well.
There's a lot of moving parts to that one. Let's think about this. Okay, I see where you're going. I think that's a Colts question, actually.
Well,
it will be a team that is not represented.
In other words,
from a state not represented.
I would assume. Let's say the Colts were to win the division. I would assume Notre Dame makes the college football playoff, right?
Well, that's true.
If the Texans win the division,
out of my head.
I'm assuming that Texas wins the college football playoff.
For sure.
If the Titans win the division, Tennessee is very questionable in that regard, but they could make it, right?
They could.
Then it comes down to if the Jaguars were to win the division, do your Miami Hurricanes make it in? Because I don't think Florida or Florida State does, right?
I mean, they're certainly not predicted to be. Although Florida has a really good quarterback, and I think they overall were a bad team last year, but they finished pretty strong. And the quarterback is, in a couple of years, could be like a top 5 pick.
Okay,
so anyway.
So let me ask you this question. If Florida has a really good quarterback, is that the first time you've been able to say that in the last 10 years?
Yes. I think that's probably true, yes.
Interesting.
They've had quarterbacks. They always have one, but can you name them? Yeah, I think that's probably true. So, hey, listen, we got our own quarterback issues down at Miami trying to replace Cam Ward, but, Carson Beck there are definitely worse options, so I'm interested to see how that goes. But to your original question, I definitely think Florida has probably got – Florida and Tennessee probably got the weaker cases of those teams that you talked about.
And also probably the two franchises that would be, if you were to rank the AFC South of likelihood to win division, I mean, it's Houston first, and then who do you put second?
Well, that's a great question. I think the Colts are second. Just forget about last year or the year before. I just think right now, I think if you look at the quality of team, top to bottom, I like the Colts behind Houston. They have the biggest wild card at quarterback, though, right? The quarterback position, I think, is the biggest wild card for them. So that's why predicting the Colts is tough, because you don't know what you're getting at quarterback. But I do think their team overall, now assuming these injuries slow down at some point, I do think their team overall pretty strong, and I think can contend for the division just on the strength of that. The quarterback will decide, whether they're higher or lower than expectations, I think.
Stephen, in terms of positions for the Colts, the quarterback is the one that is a big question mark, but let's go to cornerback and defensive backs in general. This is one that I will give the Colts credit. They've had good depth. I think Chris Ballard has built on this roster coming in, but now attrition already rearing its ugly head. Where do things stand first and foremost in terms of the corners that are hurt and the possibility that they could miss, let's say, week 1?
Well, I mean, at least for right now, we'll get to week 1 in a second, but for right now, I'm about to go out there and start running 40s to make sure I can get in shape, because they may call on me at this point. It's not great. I think that, we have already established Justin Wally's out for the season. We are also monitoring Jalen Jones, and that one doesn't seem to have had a lot of progress with that hamstring injury. Juju Brents, same thing, although his might be a little less serious than Jalen Jones. The corners that are playing in practice right now, I mean, you're talking about Jonathan Edwards and Samuel Womack. I mean, that's who's out there. And obviously Shavarius Ward, who you can pencil in as number one, and in fact, you can write it in pen. But outside of him, you're talking about guys who were supposed to be, the fourth, fifth options are now the second and third options, right? So that's not great. Now, I wouldn't say that week one is in jeopardy yet. I think they're still pretty hopeful. And Kenny Moore, by the way, Kenny Moore went down the other day. I was pretty worried about that one, but the early feedback is that is not a serious injury. So I'm going to take them at their word until I see otherwise. But not great. It's not great. And that is such an important position. The last thing I'll say, it is a really important position in this defense, which is why just the secondary in general, which is why you saw them approach it the way they did. Big moves in free agency, pretty aggressive in the draft. They did what they had to do because it's important.
Stephen, if, for an example, this is why I asked the question about corner. Give me other positions. This is what I've been talking about today, and I want you to, take this and go further because I think you would know better than I the areas this could be the case. If the Colts have to, based on attrition, go with a corner or two that maybe they were not originally anticipating having to keep on the roster with the 53-man, that would come at the cost of a player at what other position?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was just talking to an agent about the roster outlook right now, and just sort of where the pieces are going to fit all together. And it is a puzzle. And I think you are right. Defensive line was the position we were talking about. Like, how many defensive linemen can you keep? Because two things. Number one, they like a lot of those guys. And then number two, just historically, Chris Ballard, the GM, has really been predisposed to keeping a lot of guys at that position. He loves him some defensive line. So I think that is the position that could be impacted if in fact they have to keep an additional corner or two, which is always possible. I mean, I've always noticed, and I'm sure you have too, I mean, that position, corner in particular, that is where you really have to have, I think, the most depth of any. Maybe offensive line would be the other, but corner in particular, those guys, they get soft tissue injuries. They're like race cars, all the cliches we use. It's true, and they're experiencing that right now. So I think defensive line could be directly impacted by that. We'll have to see. The other one I'd say, by the way, real quick, is possibly tight end, because there may be a question there, and this is hypothetical, I don't know, but there may be a question there of, do you keep 3 or 4, or can you keep 3 or 4, and then should you? But that's a different question.
Well, and that's so. Let's say I think they keep 4 for sure. Let's go tight end, Stephen. Okay, Stephen Holder, our guest, ESPN.com. Right. Obviously, Tyler Warren. Okay, boom, done. Mo Alley Cox. What's that?
I've heard of Tyler Warren.
Exactly.
I heard he's good. Yeah.
Mo Alley Cox, I think very safely we would say done, right? Sold.
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Drew Ogletree?
I think.
Okay, and then I think personally, and you might even be able to say this guy above Ogletree, Will Mallory. I think Will Mallory at this point, he's had a really good camp, and he's shown some things, right? It's hard.
I love the camp that Will Mallory has had.
Right.
It's completely unexpected. I didn't foresee it, but I think he's made a strong enough bid that even the push that Jelani Woods has made, I think, has been basically canceled out by what Will Mallory has done. So, yeah, I would agree.
So that's the thing that I've been saying is Jelani Woods to me in this case, and Stephen, the thing I've been saying all show today, and you tell me if you disagree, is this is like Selection Sunday in the NCAA tournament, where if you've got to go with a corner that you didn't think was going to make the roster because of attrition as an insurance policy, that's a bid stealer. That's that small school that gets into the tournament by winning their conference tournament. And Jelani Woods suddenly becomes the 19-12 Texas A&M that is left out. That's the guy to me that I look at and go, I think they like him, but I don't think there's room for him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, I mean, in a perfect world where you can keep, limitless tight ends, you want to take a longer look at Jelani Woods, right? I mean, they drafted him as a guy with a lot of upside, the physical traits, all of those things, right? But there's a couple things. First, the obvious, he's never done really anything in terms of consistent contributions because he's been hurt, which is what it is, right? He's been hurt. It's kind of the Juju Brent situation. But the problem here is that he really doesn't have anything invested with this current coaching staff. I mean, he had a little bit of a run as a rookie like 3 years ago now. I mean, he's in the class of 22 or 23, I should say, I guess, but 22. No, it's 22. And so the class of 22. So in 23 and 24, he's been completely sidelined, done nothing. So does Shane Steichen even know who he is? He has no role he hasn't had any role for this coaching staff in their offense. So now Will Mallory has, and maybe can build on what he did last year. So I agree. I think if it's 1-for-1 there, or one versus the other, I think Will Mallory clearly has the edge, if you ask me.
Steven, every year there is a player in the National Football League, typically during the draft. This happens in the NBA as well, where you later find out, you'll hear from a scout or an executive, and they'll say, look, we're not going to lie to you. We actually were going and scouting player A, and when we put the tape in, I think this is how Darius Leonard got discovered. We put the tape in, and we're like, this other guy is in every play. He's all over the field. Well, let's take a further look at this guy. Give me a player in this year's camp, I guess not named, say, Will Mallory, but give me a player in this year's camp that you were looking and evaluating a situational battle, and yet you were like, man, I can't overlook this guy. He just keeps making plays. I didn't expect that was going to be the case. And lo and behold, they're not going to be able to keep him off the roster.
So this guy's not new, but I think it kind of applies to what you're talking about there. Tyler Goodson at running back, who his I guess, memorable moment in his time with the Colts is dropping a fourth down pass with the playoffs on the line 2 years ago, right? And him crying tears, understandably, in the locker room that night against Houston in week 17 or week 18. So certainly not a memorable moment or one you want to remember. But that's been his biggest mark that he's made with the Colts. He is coming into camp this year, giving him credit here, and had a really strong camp. And I was looking at that battle back there and kind of pegging him maybe as the fourth guy, thinking, Khalil Herbert, maybe someone they brought in this offseason, someone who may slide in there as number 3 behind DJ Giddens, so I is number 2 behind Jonathan Taylor. And Tyler Goodson just keeps showing up. And the other thing he's got going for him is that he's a special teams demon. And he plays a lot of special teams, and he has carved out a role there. And that's the secret sauce, right? You've got to make yourself indispensable in some way, and special teams is how you do that. So Tyler Goodson right now, I think he's on the 53. So I think that's where this is headed, with still a couple preseason games to go and another joint practice, so things can change. But as we sit here today, that's my call.
Okay, now a guy that will go the opposite, that you just assumed, look, this is lock, stock, and barrel, and the more that you've gone along camp, the more you go, is the real version of this guy going to stand up? Because I don't know what's going on, but he has not performed.
Good question. I would say, this is a good question. I guess I would say there's not as much of a battle at the offensive line as I thought there might be. I mean, look, Tanner Bortolini was, I think, always going to be the starting center. But Danny Pinter, I mean, when they decided to keep him, they kept talking about him, and they keep bringing him back. And I thought that might be more of a battle, and it really wasn't, apparently, from what I can tell, at least. So I don't know if that's exactly the answer, but or an appropriate answer, but that never really materialized, I'd say. And I think they have their offensive line, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but certainly if you can have more competition, that's never a bad thing. I don't know that there was much of a competition there.
Yeah, that was one. I still think Pinter, though, and you tell me if you disagree, Stephen, but I think Pinter has a lot of value to them. I've been higher on him, I think, than most. But because of the fact that he can Swiss Army knife it a little, he might not be a 7 at any position on the line, but he's a 6 at like 2 or 3 different positions. And sometimes I'd rather have that guy than a guy that is a solid 9 but can't go anywhere.
Well, at minimum, you need to have a reliable backup center. It's like no other position, right? I mean, you've got to know that this guy can snap reliably. And he started at the position many times. So he's a reliable backup center, and that'll keep you on the roster at least, particularly when you have the ability to also play guard if you need to, which he does. So I think his roster spot is mostly safe, but I just don't think the starting competition has really materialized.
By the way, you know who's got – let me ask you this. Who's got a better gig, Luke Rhodes or Rigoberto Sanchez? Luke Rhodes, by the way, the long snapper, only long snapper on the roster. He's one of – Luke Rhodes is literally one of 32 walking, growing men on planet Earth that know how to long snap in the NFL. I guess 33 because Matt Overton still does it and it, like, gets calls. And then Rigoberto Sanchez, punter and holder, and got that pretty nailed down, and we don't say his name a lot, but pretty solid player, right?
Yeah, well, first off, Luke Rhodes, for those who don't know his story, do you know his story? His story is fantastic. It's an amazing story. He got here, I think under Ryan Grigson, came here as a linebacker, and, maybe slightly undersized or maybe not like the most stunning athlete per se, but he definitely, he played hard. He definitely was a physical guy. I mean, you look at him, you can tell he's a physical guy. He's got muscles coming out of places you didn't think there were supposed to be muscles. But anyhow, that was never going to be his long-term future. He didn't have a long-term future in the NFL as a linebacker, at least just from what I saw. Although he did play in a couple games late in maybe like the 2017 or 16 or 17 season. So anyway, fast forward to that offseason, and they had some issue at long snapper. It's so long ago, I don't even remember the details. And they decided to try him out at long snapper.
It wouldn't have been Justin Snow, right?
I don't know that it was. I don't know who it was, to be completely honest. It's too long ago. I don't remember. All I remember is this started out as an experiment. Let's see if this guy can snap. And he poured himself into it. And wouldn't you freaking know, the guy becomes a Pro Bowl long snapper. I mean, it's ridiculous. That just never happens, right? But you talk about, being open to a different idea. Most guys don't want to change positions. They're like, that's out there, especially from linebacker to long snapper. I mean, you talk about a hit to your ego, right? And it's like, oh, you don't think I can play linebacker? You want me to go snap the ball? What? But he poured himself into it. He worked at it, and it has been the best thing that ever happened to him. He's now on his 3rd contract. It's absolutely a ridiculous story. So I think he has kind of the best job because, you have to really
Steven,
screw it up.
Here's the thing. He probably has the best job because he's the only player on the roster. Well, Sanchez as well. They're the only 2 players on the roster, I think, that have no backup, right? So there's job security there.
Right.
However,
have you ever heard of a long snapping battle? They don't even bring in other long snappers, right?
That's right. Here's the thing.
They got 2 kickers in camp. They never have 2 long snappers, right?
It's because you can't find 2. There's only 32 guys, and then Matt Overton. That's it, right? But
you have to really suck for them to be like, you know what?
You have to.
Got to get rid of this guy.
Think about this though. You got to be able to bend all the way down to look and like see back, like way behind you, and snap it. Yeah. You got to snap it, and then as soon as you snap it, you have to then somehow stave off a guy that is trying to run over you. I mean, that would suck, right?
And then a full sprint down the field to make a tackle.
Too, that too. Yeah. I mean, there's job security in it.
It's not an easy job.
Now, okay, here's the thing. In terms of long snapper and I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to guess, okay? I'm going to guess Luke Rhodes College. And I should know this, but it's been forever since he joined the roster, so it's been too long since I've looked. I'm sure when he joined, I knew this, and probably people in their cars all know this. Eddie, without telling me what it is, do you happen to know the College of Luke Rhodes?
I just looked it up during the conversation, so I know.
Is it a marquee football school? Don't tell me the school.
No.
Is it a Division I school?
Yes.
Steven, do you know the answer to this, by the way?
In just football.
It's a Division I football school, but
I do know the answer.
Division I football school, but not basketball? Usually it's the other way around, right?
Well, wait a minute. I'm trying to remember now. I think they're definitely in one of those special categories.
I'll go William and Mary. William and Mary.
There's no way.
Are you serious? Yes! Yes! Hold on. Now, Steven, can you tell me the last William and Mary, and they're the tribe, by the way. Can you tell me the last William and Mary player that I believe started for the Indianapolis Colts, not named Luke Rhodes?
No, but I bet you can.
True story. And I've told this before, but it's worth repeating. The year of the Curtis Painter year for the Colts. So before you were not here then, were you, Steven, or were you?
I was not.
Okay.
A couple years before me, yeah.
So very clearly, I think we can now realize that the Colts had a master plan of the suck for luck, right? And they knew that Peyton Manning was not going to be healthy and whatever else. I was doing an IndyCar race. I can't remember where we were. It was the end of the year, and the Colts had just announced their roster completion, but they had like 2 days. And I was in the airport. I don't remember what airport it was. And there were two Colts players trying to get back to Indianapolis because they had to report on Monday because they had made the roster. And it was Nick, I want to say his last name was Nick Johnson. They ended up trading him. He was a corner out of USC. They traded him to Philly. And then David Caldwell, who was a safety out of William and Mary. And our flight got canceled. We were in Washington, D.C. That's where we were. We were coming back from the Baltimore race. Our flight got canceled, and these two guys are standing there. We're all standing there trying to figure out when we can fly home. And they're like, there are no more flights tonight. You got to come back tomorrow. And these guys were freaking out. And so we all went to the rental car facility to see about renting a car to drive back. And these two rookie guys who just found out they made an NFL roster got the last rental car to drive from Washington, D.C. to Indianapolis, and they drove back together in a smart car. The last car they had.
A smart car.
A smart car, two of them. Like Kermit and Fozzie driving in the Studebaker across the countryside, except for that it was like 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, and they had to report at like noon the next day. And so I waited and got the flight the next day, and then saw them at Colts camp like that, the Colts facility a week later, and they told me the whole story. They're like, oh my gosh, it was the worst. It took 14 hours and da-da-da. And they made it back just in the nick of time.
There are two NFL head coaches that went to William and Mary.
Current coaches?
Current.
Do you know that one, Steven?
Current head coaches?
Yes.
Where did Mike Tomlin go?
No.
Bingo, there's one.
Bingo!
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's one. That's fair.
Listen to this. I mean, have you ever had more information spout off at the top of somebody's noggin about William? And here's the thing. I know a lot about Mary. William is the one where I'm clueless. But still, this is impressive. Who's the other one?
I mean, well, what we've established here is that there is an NFL line from William and Mary.
Correct.
That's the right side of this.
Who's the other one, Eddie?
Sean McDermott.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, is also from William and Mary.
Like I said, pipeline, baby.
Steven, who starts week 1 at quarterback?
Ooh, I am just sort of, I would say, just a very small nod right now, for me at least, to Anthony Richardson.
Well, and it's a part of that because Daniel Jones hasn't won it.
Yeah, he has not, in my opinion. Okay? I do think that matters, right? Unless they're just lying to us, and all of this talk about we still believe in Anthony Richardson, he still has a future. Unless all of that's just a bunch of smoke up our rear ends, well, then you got to walk the walk. And talking the talk means nothing. Walking the walk would be, okay, we wanted to bring in competition. We wanted to see if we could get more out of him. It seems that they have. Look, I'm not saying it's perfect, and there are times in camp when Shane Steichen's frustrated and he doesn't make the play he's supposed to make. All that's true, okay? This is not a coronation of the guy being a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying, if all of those things are true, that you still believe all those things, and then we have Daniel Jones doing what he has done so far, well, then it's hard, in my mind, to justify it. And you would have to sit down and explain that to me, how you arrive at that conclusion after everything you've said and what we saw in camp. That would, to me, be a very difficult thing to explain. So I do have a theory, though, about the quarterback situation, if you'll indulge me for like 30 seconds. I think this is my default answer for people who ask me. So if you stop me at Kroger and you ask me what I think, this is what I'm going to tell you. And I believe it. I think they end up in the same place no matter who the quarterback is. And this is what I mean by that. You're just going to get there in different manners, meaning with Daniel Jones, very predictable, very steady, not spectacular. Anthony, somewhat spectacular, somewhat frustrating, up, down, left, right, but ultimately you get to the same place in different ways. I really think that.
Yeah, I would
so
agree
I
with
don't know
that.
what that record is, but I think that's where they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Both of them are kind of like renting a smart car. It eventually gets you there, right?
Exactly.
Just ain't glamorous.
Exactly. So neither guy is ideal, right?
I determined
right now.
earlier
now
today.
Anthony can change that.
You're right. I determined earlier today the Colts are the Colts right now in the NFL are the Minnesota of the Big Ten. They're not terrible. They're okay. If there was a Little Caesars Bowl in the NFL playoffs, the Colts would be there. That's where they are right now. Now, Anthony Richardson, though, feels like gives you more possibility of elevating to the Outback Bowl, but you just don't know. All right, Steven.
And the potential downsides there are injury and all that comes with that too. So there's that factor as well, right? Which is why Daniel Jones is here.
More William and Mary chat next week, I promise. Maybe next time we'll just we'll slide over and we'll start talking Pittsburgh State or other random schools that contribute to the legacy of the NFL. Appreciate it as always, Steven.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Stephen Holder from ESPN.com. Eddie, you will. Well, people can see it right here on the YouTube chat. I did not look up any of that, right?
Nope, you did not. Educating and entertaining, Jake.
But that has to go to, that was deep down somewhere in my cerebral cortex in the subconscious, and it came out. But still, as is typically the case, I'm very impressed with myself. Did we get Scott Agnes is off the control chair, right? He's back in my good grace now?
I think so.
Okay, he's going to join us. I will admit, because we're doing 90s music all day, right? This is a great song. It's probably like one of those that didn't age well necessarily because it's kind of cheesy, but it's very catchy, is it not?
Most definitely. I remember this song mainly because of it being in Shrek.
This was in Shrek?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that Shrek. That's about a big fat guy that's jolly, right?
It's an ogre.
Excuse me?
He's an ogre.
Is that a real term?
Yeah.
I think of ogre from Revenge of the Nerds. You know, you kind of look like Dudley.
Okay.
Better known as Booger. You kind of look like Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. A little bit. Right?
I've been told I look like Sal Vulcano from Impractical Jokers.
Okay. It's better than ogre, right?
Yeah.
Scott Agnes, I'm sure, thrilled to be joining us now based on that segue from Fieldhouse Files. Fever in action tonight, taking on Dallas. Pacers in the news as well. Scott, I'll give you your pick. Pacers or Fever, you want to start with which?
Let's start with Pacers.
Okay. I would like to know your thought on this. There's part of me that when I saw that they are going to start the year on national television against Oklahoma City, I'm thrilled by that. I think it's cool. And then at the same time, I have this like apprehension about it because at the risk of sounding, I'm like, man, the challenge here is the fact that it's like a no-win. If they lose the game, people are going to be like, see, they wouldn't have beaten Oklahoma City anyway. And if they win it, then you're going to be like, man, if they just could have done that, like it just feels like it's too soon. Does that make sense? It's too soon.
It does, but I think you're always going to have that feeling, Pacer fans will, about, look, they were up at halftime, and if not for that injury, Tyrese probably would have went for 30 points, and the Pacers may have won that. That's going to tear Pacer fans up infinitely. I think the good thing here is it allows for that storyline of the Pacers being the great story, and along with the Thunder, to persist for that first week of the year. And it's not the Pacers, Jake, going to OKC and on their ring night. No, that'll be 2 days earlier. It is the Pacers' first game, but not the Thunder's. Therefore, I think that would have stung. I don't think that would have been fair to the Pacers to put them back in OKC and on ring night.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the part about and for Oak City, I heard Kevin mention this morning. He's like, man, is that a back-to-back for Oak City? It's not, but it's going to be, it's not their first game of the year.
Those are Sega Babas, Jake. Not back-to-back. Sega Babas.
Nobody says that.
And by the way, Jake, we could mention too is even worse is Pacers scheduled them for a preseason game. So before that matchup, we're already going to see them again, OKC, in the preseason, by the way.
It's too soon. And here's the thing. It's not like there's some heated rival, right?
Not at all.
It's just you're like, oh, man. It's just – and then you forget, Scott, it's so weird because you're so excited about – and I am. I mean, for the Pacers and everything they did, I mean, it was so magical and it was so much fun and this team is so likable, and then you just keep forgetting that two of its marquee pieces from a year ago are not going to be there, and one of them's not going to be back. I mean, it's a very strange thing. Were you surprised, though, that they did not get not only that they didn't get a Christmas game, but that there's only one Eastern Conference Christmas game?
It sure tells you what the league thinks about the East, doesn't it?
Totally.
Right? Like that was my first indicator. I was not surprised Pacers did not get Christmas Day. They never really do. They haven't since, I think, 2004. And because they're not going to be at full strength with Tyrese. I think otherwise you absolutely put that as the rematch. That is their first meeting, a rematch of the finals. But without it, the other thing here, if we're being honest, is it's a data company, ESPN and the networks. And they know Pacers and OKC is not going to outdraw one of the bigger teams. So the fact that the Celtics, who have been on since 2015 every year on Christmas Day, they didn't get chosen either. No way the Pacers would then.
Okay, Fever in action tonight. They are taking on Dallas. What we know is this. Odyssey Sims is in because of losing, our McDonald and Sidney Colson as well. This is a player, we talked about it earlier with Stephanie White, Scott, but for those that didn't hear it, the one thing about Odyssey Sims that I think is kind of advantage, not only is it a skilled player and a veteran, but she has been in this situation before of being kind of airdropped into a team in the middle of the season. And I think that's actually important to have somebody with that level of experience in that unique situation. You agree?
Absolutely. And on top of that, she's a veteran. So this isn't a second or third year player still trying to prove what they can do and unfamiliar with the other teams in the league. No, she's been around. She's played for a half dozen teams. So there's a meet understanding there. Has obviously some familiarity with Harry McDonald as well, a little bit in that backcourt. But I think she'll be used on a need basis here. They already have certain things that they like that have worked out. The reality is they just need some depth at that point guard for when players get injured or what have you. Still, I would expect maybe Sophie Cunningham, Kelsey Mitchell to still shoulder much of the load there at that point guard spot. But Sims will be a necessary piece here for the final dozen games of the regular season.
When we had Stephanie White on earlier, Scott, I didn't, and I probably failed in this regard, but there has been so much talk about Caitlin Clark and not much movement of update there that I didn't ask Stephanie White because she talked about it yesterday. I should have asked for that update today. Has there been anything today, or at least within the last hour or so, in terms of new news or movement on Caitlin Clark?
No, and I wouldn't expect that at all. For one, they've kind of followed the Pacers script here. Is they're not doing morning shoot-arounds at home anymore. They're doing the walkthroughs in the afternoon. So that allows for them to all just come to the arena an hour early. But she's still working on her own, getting trying to get just healthy again. She's done a little bit more on the court, has not participated in any team practices. So like it has been for the last 3 weeks or so, no real update, and you just got to play the waiting game and hope for her to get as healthy as she can be before the regular season. But that clock is obviously ticking fast for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long – it's crazy to say with a player as good as she is and as much as she means to this team, but how long realistically, Scott, do you think it goes? How many games does she need, do you think, to get, like, completely acclimated, if you will?
I'd say probably 2 to 3 for sure. The challenge in all this is she's coming off where she'll be out at least a month, right? And so there's got to be a ramp-up period. And the fact that, she's not playing 5-on-5 up and down practice and anything like that means you obviously have to temper your expectations for probably both her workload and her usage with all this, because it's not like coming right into camp when you're in the best shape and you're ready to get going. She's going to need some full practices to get in, and then she'll probably need a couple of games at least to be back in rhythm. She's already said earlier this season, first player I've ever heard say this, that I rather not have a minutes restriction or not play at all. And so I thought, but I think she's probably tweaked that. That's probably the younger, inexperienced side of her, a player that hasn't dealt with injuries. Is the first fever for the team, it's better if she can get out there for 25 minutes eventually here, regardless of despite maybe even having that minutes restriction. This is just also new that she's having to figure it out on the fly here.
Yeah, and it's Scott, it's so, we've been looking for so long from the time that Caitlin Clark began missing games of that date. I think it's the 17th, that if they could get through that, then they have like a 4 or 5 day period where then the acclimation period from a practice standpoint can begin. Mm-hmm. And at the time that we said that seemed like almost absurd because it was so far out. Yet here we are now, right? I mean, we are getting close to that time, and then you wonder if it even goes beyond that, right?
Absolutely, for sure, because there's almost an expected bumps in the road when you come back from something like this. And when you come back, by the way, from multiple injuries, I want to underline the fact that it's not just recovering from right groin, one isolated. No, before that it was left groin, and probably maybe that quad strain's fine by now. But this is not a simplistic ankle tweak that we so ordinarily talk about in basketball, and so it could get complicated. It could, she's going to make sure she comes back on her timeline and does it the right way this time.
Scott, what's new at Fieldhouse Files?
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to the full NBA schedule release coming up on Thursday, and then I'll be at the Fever game tonight and have full reaction from there.
And you can hear the Fever game right here on this radio station. Eddie will have pre- and post-game coverage as well. Appreciate it, Scott.
Great. Thanks, Jake.
Scott Agnes joining us from Fieldhouse Files. We'll come back, put a tie on all of it, and is John here today, or is he out and about, Eddie?
That's a good question. I think he's here today.
So we will hand it off to J&V. We'll do it on the other side here, Query Company on the Fan. Eddie, one of the things when it comes to, I saw Aaron Rodgers is unhappy about the new football helmet he has to wear.
Hey, Jake, the clouds are outside.
What's that?
I thought we were just stating things that we knew.
Yeah. No,
Aaron Rodgers hates something.
No kidding, right? Speaking of clouds, he's the old guy yelling at him. But he was talking about the helmets. He doesn't like the new helmet that he has to wear. And it got me thinking, we talk all the time. One of the more common things that I ask you, I don't know, every couple months, and I'm admittedly oddly fascinated with this.
Yep.
My buddy Sean Kroll, who teaches sports marketing in the Fisher School District, is always talking about logos and uniforms in sports.
Yes.
And I've asked you a million times who has the best helmets in the NFL, and there's kind of a rotation of answers there. But what I haven't asked you is, who do you think has the worst?
The worst?
Who has the lamest helmets in the NFL?
Can I unfortunately say I think the Colts are in this category?
That's fair.
Or the Browns. Or the Browns.
The Browns, I don't disagree, except for that there's like kind of and the same holds true here for the Colts. There's an element of originality. I'm sorry, originality is probably the wrong word for the Colts, but like tradition. There's a traditionally, laden thing to it. And the Browns, the fact it's just an orange helmet, I mean, it's you're either going to love it or hate it, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the two that I just can't get past. Actually, there's three now. There are three teams that, to me, their helmet looks like a bad USFL from the 80s helmet design. Like they just took a big sticker and slapped it on the side of it. Would you like to guess what three I'm talking about?
Go ahead.
The Panthers,
Okay.
the Patriots, and the Titans.
Okay, I can see it.
The logos just are weird looking. I don't know. They don't naturally blend into the helmet. It's hard to explain. They just look like they tried too hard to an extent. And then there's some that I go back and forth on. Sometimes I like the Eagles. Sometimes I think they're terrible. Sometimes
You're talking about the helmet and not the band, right?
That's right. The band is sleepy. I got in a huge debate with somebody one time that told me that the Eagles are the definition of rock and roll, and I'm like, they're sleepy. They're almost. J&V would be a perfect person to ask. John, do you consider? And I know that they're not typically listed as such.
Yes.
But would you say that the Eagles more classify as classic rock or as yacht rock?
Classic. Yeah, it's absolutely classic.
Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Rock and roll or yacht rock? Like
rock and roll.
See, I don't think of them as rock. I think of them as sleepy.
I think there's a little bit more country in there than people give them credit for, too.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So, no, I think that's classic 70s rock. I think it's what I would describe the Eagles as right there. I think it's along the same lines as Steve Miller Band and all the other classic 70s rock.
But I think Steve Miller Band has a little more tempo to it. Like the Eagles, to me, I don't know why, but the Eagles, to me, they feel like I'm in the dentist's office. I don't know why.
Well, see, I mean, Steve Miller Band does the same. I mean, I think anything from the 70s does that for me. I mean,
Really?
hell, Paranoid by Black Sabbath is in the dentist
that's probably
office
true.
now.
I mean, a lot of it just reminds you of like being driven around in the
you go
back of
out,
your mom's car, right?
So Iron Man, you go, I'm getting my teeth worked on, and that's playing in the dentist office.
Did you hear what happened
now.
to Michael Young?
I did not. What happened?
I told this on the show today. Michael Young flying back from Portland. I can't imagine a worse scenario than this. He was at the dentist today, which is because I wanted to call in and tell this. Michael Young was flying back from Portland, and the girl in the seat next to him on the plane puked on him.
Really?
Now, can you imagine?
That's how I met Greg Lansing coming back from the Final Four in Houston.
You puked on
I
him?
didn't know him. No, I was so hungover, and I didn't know who he was at the time. I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Hey, man, may want to watch out because I'm gonna puke on somebody on this flight right here. I just hope it's not you." And was Greg Lansing, Indiana State's head coach.
But you
at the
did not
time.
actually
I did not know who it was.
Right? Somebody sent me a thing when I mentioned this that their son and daughter-in-law went to Key West for their honeymoon, and they were so hungover after their wedding that his son threw up twice on the airplane and had a layover in Charlotte and had to buy new clothes at the airport. He had to buy Duke shorts.
So it was Michael Young kind of like Stand By Me, where there was like a chain reaction puking going on too?
Well, he said he went back to the galley and with their soda water and sat there and rinsed himself for like 20 minutes on the plane.
Hey, where are you tomorrow?
Shannon and I are going to our annual White Sox game.
Awesome.
And then I'm back Thursday.
Shannon. I'm going to play.
That's what she said.
I'm going to play the Henry Gross classic Shannon from the 1970s. Although I will say this, Stephanie White will have to listen on Saturday night because it's nothing but the 90s.
Oh, really?
Saturday night, yeah.
Okay. That's
so
cool.
I'll play some Bjork for her. Human Behavior. You know the band that Bjork was in before she went solo?
No, but I know
the Icelandic group known as the Sugar Cubes.
I know that she isn't she the one that dressed in the swan dress one year at the Grammys?
Yeah,
Made
and
quite
like
the
a whole
splash there?
meat outfit once, I think, too. Human Behavior, Big Time Sensuality, and Army of Me, 3 of her most noted songs.
Look
Bjork.
at John with the Bjork knowledge.
Icelandic.
Not to be
favorites.
confused with Nate Bjorkman, who's the coach that we all forget.
Who was the worst coach of all stinking time, right?
Whatever
here.
happened to that? You
An
know?
incredibly bald bad coach.
What's
Yeah.
on the show today, John?
We're going to do Mike Sando, which I think people use as a term for getting a sandwich, which I always think's kind of douchey. But Mike Sando is going to explain exactly from The Athletic what everybody's saying about the Colts quarterback situation, which is far from good. Do you want the best guy, or do you want to see what Richardson is? What do you want out of this?
The latter.
Huh?
The latter.
You
I
want to
wanna
see
see
what
what-
Richardson is?
Yeah, because
That's exactly what they're going to do. But there are a lot of people out there that want the best dude.
But the best Daniel Jones gets you 10-7, and then you're right back to looking for another quarterback, right? You
I think that's what
you might
either
as well
one of
see if
these
you got
dudes
one.
are going to get you at best. 10. People should be thrilled around here if they have a Gardner Minshew type of season. Seriously.
So I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
That's where the bar is set.
All right. Well, the bar's low. There's no question about that, but the bar's high on the show
Yes.
upcoming. Speaking of bars, Dairy Bar. I'll be out there serving some milkshakes later today. So if you're at the State Fair,
Nice.
stop by and say hi, but make sure you're listening to the Fan and J&B while you're doing it. We will be back with you. Greg Rakestraw in for me tomorrow. He's going to be out at the State Fair for the Indiana Harness Racing, and then I will be back on Thursday live from Colts camp. So we will talk to you then. I appreciate you listening to Query & Company.